Welcome, everyone. So, as you know, this is our Connect with Caro, where we bring in experts on all things mindset, wellness, and relationships. And today, I am so excited because we are going beyond mindset. Like Nikki always tells me, your mindset will only get you so far, but then sometimes you gotta go into the soul. And she has taught me so much about that. So I am so excited to share my dear friend Nikki with you. Nikki, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I was just with you yesterday and now we're in other states.
I
But
know.
it's cold over here. But hi, everybody. I'm Nikki Novo. I'm calling in from just outside of Asheville, North Carolina, even though I grew up in Miami right by Caro. And I'm really excited to talk to you about purpose, because that's definitely the question I was asking myself for a long time, and how I ended up getting into the work that I do today. But I'm sure that many of you have like different definitions of purpose. And I would love to hear a little bit, if either of you want to share, if you just want to drop in the chat, kind of what you feel purpose is, or when you ask that question, like what do you think you're asking? Anybody wants
That's a good one. That's a good one. So while people start getting ready to put it in the chat, I just want to make a little bit of an introduction of who you are. So I don't know if any of you read my email that I sent out yesterday, but I didn't grow up knowing Nikki. We weren't friends. I stumbled upon her actually when I was getting ready to write my book. I had several people that would say to me, hey, there's this girl, Nikki, she's an author, she's Cuban-American and Latina like you, she lives in Miami, you should connect with her. And one day I Googled her, and when I looked at her website, I saw that she was a medium, she was really into the dating world, like a guru in love and dating, and all this spiritual stuff. And my first response was like, oh, she looks super cool, but nothing in common. Like we have nothing, like there's nothing in common. Like I don't do any of that work. So I didn't even consider reaching out to her or connecting with her until I was at Chuck E. Cheese, of all places. And the universe decided that we were supposed to connect with each other. And that was on a random Thursday night. I was at school, and my son's like, mommy, this is my best the world. And it was this little boy named Oliver, and it turns out that Oliver is Nikki's son. And I really felt that at the time that she was brought to me, it was a very synchronistic connection. We became dear friends, and we have just spent the last several years, I think, influencing each other and connecting with each other and teaching each other, and realizing that although we come from very different languages and beliefs and philosophies on life, we are very much the same, and we share very purposeful life, and now our lives are very aligned. So I just wanted to share that little intro of you, Nikki, because you've been such a blessing in my life. So
thank you, Caro. I love you. And yesterday when I was not feeling well, I just sat on Caro's couch with hot tea, and I let her make me food. And that's the kind of friends that we are. But she is correct where, she, I guess, had heard my name before I heard her. But when we met, even at that Chuck E. Cheese in line, she had all this energy. And I don't know if you guys, any of you that know me, I'm a little bit more shy. I'm a little bit more like, I'm extroverted because I have to be, but I'm just, my energy is a little like tone her down. And Gata was like, woo. And I was like, I don't know what's happening right now. And then I was overwhelmed because, as an intuitive, I usually have it turned off. It's not like I'm going around like reading everybody's energy, but Gato's father's energy is so strong next to her. So when I was talking to her, I was like, okay, but this lady's like carrying around like something else too. So I was both, like overwhelmed by Gato's energy and her father's energy at the same time, which was really funny. And then like, I think even in that one conversation, your dad came up. So I was like, oh, that's what's with you. Like, that was like what was driving me crazy, So it was really, really funny. And I too thought, we don't have too much in common other than like our backgrounds, like where we come from. But I think like the way that we saw the world was a little different. But that is what, and then today I would say like she is one of the most important relationships I have in my life. And I would say that that's why I love soul work. So it's the concept that we are mind, body, and soul in this human form. So Caro is like, she is an expression of her spirit, and she is known as Caro, like this human form. But within her is a soul, a spirit, as I have the same thing too. This lifetime, I came looking like this, with this voice, with this face, but my spirit is much older than that and has been doing many things for before that. So when we release all the judgments and go beyond the human form, we are connecting on a soul to soul level. So Caro and my soul, we're our friends. Sometimes our human selves don't really understand each other, but like even the best is like when Caro's asking a question, I'm trying to get through to her. Like she comes to me to ask her to help her break down her dreams. And then when I tell her what they are, she's unhappy with that answer, It's like, human Caro and human Nikki are not friends. It's soul Nikki and soul Caro that are friends, if that makes any sense, because there's a lot of like going over each other's heads all the time. But
and I think it works both ways too.
Yeah, of course.
Because sometimes I'm like, human Nikki, human Nikki, we need to get you in check here.
Like, why is this human form always crying? Like, so, but that's what I love about tapping into the soul, and my whole work is dedicated to tapping into the soul. My intuition readings are all about their soul readings. So basically I'm trying to get beyond the human self, the mind, the trauma body, and trying to figure out like, what is the soul trying to express this lifetime? So I was raised Catholic, and I right away understood it as a Trinity. So like, mind, body, spirit, the same thing as Father, God, Holy Spirit, Jesus. And I work from there. But then of course, when I first, just like you guys that are maybe questioning purpose or wanting to hear about that purpose, I think purpose is like an interesting phenomenon. I think I'm an elder millennial. I'm like the last 2 years of being a millennial. So I'm like an elder. But I do give a lot of credit to the millennial for bringing that word into our space. Because I think before, really before the millennial that came into the corporate office and was like, what am I here for? We never really connected work with, what my soul came here to do this lifetime. That was like a new thing that started to show up when the millennial got into the workforce. So I was part of that. And I remember asking myself that question. I had been asking that question to myself since I was very young, because I grew up Cuban parents. My father's a physician, and I have an older brother who is 2 years older than I am. And I remember growing up, my older brother had this photo, super cute. He was dressed in these like little mini green scrubs that my mom had made him a pair of green scrubs out of my dad's green scrubs. And my dad and him are holding hands in their green scrubs. And it was just like a vision board for him at the end of the day. Like whether he liked it or not, he was going to be a doctor, right? Like that photo was at his bedside, dressed just like my dad. Like there was never any question what my brother was going to do this lifetime. My older brother, he had all the skills to match, right? He was a good student, and he was, driven to be able to excel, and he was able to follow that path. And I was really jealous about that, because on the contrary, like I did not have, nobody made me mini scrubs, thank God. And I didn't have any very specific gifts growing up, right? So, I mean, I liked, like any little girl, I liked to dance, and I, definitely loved to take up space and things like that. But to me, in a household full of scientists, which my father is a physician, my mom was a biology major and a biology professor, and I had no idea where my place was growing up. But one message I was getting very strongly from my parents, who were immigrants, exiles, would tell me, you got to study something that is going to make you money, that you can survive. And that is the story of so many of us, right? Even if we're not immigrants, I mean, for many, many generations, our ancestors were just trying to survive. So work was very much just something to be able to take care of things, pay, and survive. Very few people were able to make a decision about work from a place of passion or from a place of purpose, really. And that is more of a new phenomenon, because as humans, we are getting to a place that we don't have to just survive, we can thrive. And the more we get into that, which actually goes with the energy centers, if you guys know anything about the energy centers, the first one is your root chakra, and it's all about survival. And as we evolve and move into the next one, which is a sacral, which is right above your womb space, it's about passion and creating my life. So it's like, once we get out of survival, we start to ask these questions about joy and passion and creation. But creation, there's really not that much space for creation in survival, right? So if you're choosing your life based off survival, you're not really creating it. You're actually just doing things to like get by. And I think for many of us, specifically career was about that, right? Like, what is like a foundation, all that stuff. I am not against getting that foundation, right? So I went to school and I graduated and I got myself some skills so that I could survive if I needed to. But sometimes at some point after you get that foundation, you're like, okay, I'm not surviving. Then is like when the questions about thriving and purpose start to even like make sense.
You know what, Nikki? That actually makes me think about, a menu, right? I feel like our people that came before us, like even as our parents, like it's not many generations ago, like maybe just one generation ago, we didn't have as many options as we do now. So, when I grew up, I thought that there was like 3 career choices. It was like accountant, engineer, or lawyer, or doctor, 4, right? There just wasn't a whole lot of options. And then it seems like as we've evolved as a society, our career paths have taken on more of like a Cheesecake Factory kind of menu. And Cheesecake Factory, if you go there, it could be extremely overwhelming, because you can, if you can have a pizza or a salad or sushi in the same menu, it could get really exhausting to even try to figure that out. And so I've kind of had this theory that maybe to a certain extent, the fact that people have come out of survival and now are in this different energy level is actually causing a lot of discomfort, because they feel like they have too many options, and then there's no clarity as to where to go with all this gamut of options that they've been given. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's just part of like the evolution, right, of the species, or even the evolution of your lineage. Because the truth is, like, my grandparents who left Cuba to come here, they did not get to live the American dream, but I do, right? Or whatever, the dream that they came for, that is my role in the lineage. So I think that there is an overwhelming, and we can definitely get there, but I think we can also recognize that this was also like somebody's dream, like somebody before us placed us in this position where we're actually able to have more choices, where there was like less choices before. Of course, there's the burden of all the choices, but it's also, I think there's a way to honor the like work that happened before you to get to a place where you do have a little choices. So rather than like meeting the choices with overwhelm, you can meet it with a lot of gratitude. So not to put it on your shoulders and be like, oh, I must be whatever because my grandparents or my parents came here with nothing, but to able to see, like, if they felt that it was important to make the shift, and they were dreaming, we're like the manifestation of their dream, then I trust that there's like life for me here, that that this is exactly like where I'm meant to be, even though it is a little overwhelming, but what a blessing to be here. And that I'm going to live into that. I don't know exactly how, I don't know what that means, but I'm going to live into that dream that actually comes from generations back.
So you asked everybody to tell you what their definitions of purpose was, and we have a few here on the chat. We have what you're here to serve, what impact am I created to make throughout my time here, and then we have a very interesting one, which is 2 paths to purpose: purpose based on accomplishment, external to our inner lives, and divine purpose, what fulfills our connection to higher power and universal order. So those are your definitions. So what's your definition of purpose, Nikki?
That's a great question. I love these answers, guys, by the way. So my definition of purpose has evolved. So back to like when I was looking at that picture of my brother, like I was, like many of us, was relating purpose directly to work. Like I was like, and I was very annoyed by, the story my parents were telling me that I needed to study something that was just gonna, help me survive. And I really set out, like I had this theory or this hypothesis as a young college student that perhaps there's a way to both survive and do something you love. So my first understanding of purpose was really tied to work. It was where I was at. It's all I knew. So I pursued it through work for a long time. I was like, I believe there's something I'm here to do. I believe that that there is a way for me to do both, to both live and, and be able to do things that I love. As I have continued, and I did, figure that out. I had a whole, I started off in film industry and the film industry in LA, and I moved into media, and I was an editor for many years. So always doing like work that I loved, but actually so first I was like only doing things I loved. And then it was until I got to that job in media, in editorial, that I was selling, I was writing articles about like $3,000 handbags. And I was like, this is stupid. Like, what am I doing here? And I started to ask these deeper questions that you guys are asking, like, okay, so if I'm spending all this time, work takes up so much of our time. If I'm spending all this time and this is what I'm putting into the world, am I supporting the evolution of the collective, right? So that was like my question, and that was a big shift for me. And that's how I started to move more into this work, because I was in my own healing process. I loved it. And I was like, I think it's time to leave fashion and beauty and start moving into here. So finally I hit that place, right? Like where like work feels purposeful. And I've been doing this very purposeful work for about 10 years now. And as the 10 years have gone by, purpose has expanded for sure, because at this point, my work is my work, but it's also my business. It's many other things. So, and like anything, our life is so much bigger than just our jobs, just our work. So to me, really purpose is truly about living in alignment with what my soul came here to do. So, and I think that that's in every category of life. I see it as like, am I being the aligned parent that I want to be? Am I being in alignment with like where I live, who I hang out with, how I feed my body? So that is like what I started to understand as on a human level. Now, because of the work that I do, which is I'm doing these soul readings all the time, which has been fascinating. I have, and most people ask me this question, and there is a way to find the answer in the readings through a meditation where you go into this place called the Akashic Records. And once I've done more than 700 readings. So I've taken a look at like more than 700 purposes. So it's a lot of data that I have. And what I started to realize was that the soul has a very interesting journey in the story into human life, right? So the soul is in the in-between, somewhere, between a past life and coming into this lifetime. And it comes with its little blueprint and its little plan. It's like, I'm going to come into this lifetime. I'm going to be born, Nikki. I'm going to come through these parents. And these are the things I want to learn this lifetime. So I want to expand myself this way. I also want to help the earth this way. So there's a lot of different little plans that the soul has for itself, which is what we call the soul's contract. So the soul comes into, it's born through the mother. And the really mean thing about all of this is that we forget everything. So like, that's the hardest part about this. And we forget all of that. And what we're left is with our will versus God will. So God, our soul, our higher self, had one will, which was done somewhere else where we forgot about. And then here as a human, I started developing my own will or the wills of others and things like that. So I'm always at a conflict between those two things. And for the most part, I do believe that the forgetting is very helpful and that it's meant to happen. I wouldn't try to like tell my kids to stop forgetting.
Señorita. I'm sorry a second.
That's okay.
Sorry, guys, everybody please mute yourselves because then it messes up the recording.
Okay.
So go ahead.
So then we forget everything. And it serves a purpose. Like it's important for us to forget. We'll walk a bit of a path that's a little different than our true path. And that's very normal. And then one day or accumulations of days, we start to ask these questions like, what is my purpose? Is it worth me writing these articles about $3,000 handbags? And people get really scared about these questions because it peaks them out of like that, web that we're in, this little like asleepness that we have. It's the beginning of the awakening, right? And we get afraid when we ask these questions. We're like, oh my gosh, like I'm having a crisis, life is falling apart. But in my work, when those questions start coming, it is like the most beautiful time. It is the most perfect time because it actually means that you're remembering. So you're not lost when you start to ask these questions. On the contrary, you are remembering. You're like, what's that thing I signed up for? Like, what did I say I came here for? And believe it or not, like what you're doing is like you're peeking out of like the stuckness that we get into this human body. And we're really starting to connect to the divine and to our divine selves to get those answers. So I see it as like almost like I wake up from this amnesia. I'm trying to find a telephone that can call back to like where I came from so that I can remember my mission. And I do believe, especially from seeing clients, I do believe your purpose has seasons, which a lot of us have a problem with that, because we want it to be this like finite, we want it to be this very like defined thing. And sometimes
we want it to be resolved. We want it to be resolved.
Yes. Good. Yes. Good way of saying it. And because, you want to be like, oh, I got it. I figured it out and I'll never have to deal with this again. But the truth is like, as you close up one part of that, that purpose, then another one starts to show itself. So from what I've seen in my practice, we have this very big, like general purpose, which is like, you want to imagine like this big goal that you have for this lifetime. And there's definitely categories. I see that some people come to do like lineage work. So they come to clear out, like, so there's these people that are really trying to redo what came before them or, or fix it a little bit or, all that. And then, try to help the next generation. So a lot of them, people doing it in their families. Then we definitely see people that come for the collective. So people that really do have some work to support the earth as it starts to evolve and expand and all that stuff. And this, from in many different cultures has been known as a very important time. And it's because there's a lot of light in the earth, believe it or not. And there's a lot of expansion, a lot of fast expansion coming. So a lot of you guys have come to support that expansion. So your little light selves are coming and like blasting all that light to make that happen. And these are all very general purposes. But then we always see like a current purpose, like what is currently important. And these are, to me, if my purpose was this big, like general thing, the current purposes are more like the to-do, like the task underneath, trying to get to that bigger goal. It's like the steps that get me there. So for 10 years, I might be working on security, like, like maybe that is something that I'm trying to, bring into my lineage that's never been there before. But then after those 10 years of security, I start to ask myself like other questions, and it's just more and more that adds on to that, that bigger purpose. So what I would say is, like, if you're trying to ask yourself and find those questions, number one, you're not lost. Like, if you can start telling yourself that this is like a good thing, because I think we can get just like scared in general and overall overwhelmed when that starts to happen. But on the contrary, like, start really applauding yourself that you're remembering. It could be a little difficult because when you start to remember and everybody else around you is still asleep because they're in their process, you might feel even more alone, and a little scared. So you do want to see if you can find people that have this understanding that, like, we are spiritual beings. I know God likes to say this: spiritual beings living in human bodies. So we are here for a spiritual experience. We're just in these little vehicles. Not everybody knows that or has remembered that, and that's okay. But when you are starting to remember it, it might get a little lonely. So make sure you're like finding your people that have a little bit of that understanding, because it'll help you stay in the zone. If not, you'll fall back asleep and forget. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Nikki, I want to ask you some questions about that, because I've seen in my work a lot of commonalities as well. And I want to bring them up here with you to see if maybe you have just a little clarity for people. So one thing that I notice is that when you talk about this time of remembering, when you say, okay, well, these people are kind of like waking up and they're remembering, a lot of these people go from living life the way that it's always been to now feeling like they've been doing everything incorrectly. Right. So then now they start questioning, wait, how did I get into this field? Or how did I spend 15 years doing this work? Or how is it that now I'm not feeling aligned? Or why is it that I do good work, but I still don't feel fulfilled? And I think that the questions that pop up, besides making people feel lost, it also makes them feel very, very frustrated because they don't understand how to even tap into that. Like, they don't understand, like, well, once this is happening within me and now I'm not feeling aligned, how am I going to tap into that? Oh, and by the way, I can't abandon the whole life I've created. So what do I do with this existing world and all this stuff that I'm carrying with me into this awakening? So what do you tell those people that have been in this process and in this journey, and now all of a sudden, like, they've built this house and they live in this house and it comes with responsibilities and people that they are responsible for, and teams and work and money and bank accounts and all this stuff, and now they're feeling this question of, have I been doing it all wrong, or am I supposed to be doing something else?
You can burn it all down, right? We always have a choice. Some of us are more, I don't even know what the word is, but I'm sure there's been moments that you have burned certain things down to the ground in your life, and that is always a choice. That's always there. But what I would say is that the part of the human experience is to forget. So whatever you do during that time that you have forgotten is completely on purpose. Sometimes we might be a little hard on ourselves because we know that we were trying to be awakened earlier. You're like, oh gosh, 3 years ago, I knew this. 4 years ago, like when I was walking down the aisle, I knew this. And that is, that's a place that can be like a hard place to be. But even, I wish I knew scripture better, but there's like so many verses about like how patient, like, the Lord is with us, right? Like how patient, like, it's okay. They'll keep trying to wake you up over and over again. Some of the waking ups get very dramatic, but like, it's okay if we missed whatever like moments, that we missed. But here we are. So, Maya Angelou, right? Like, now that you know better, like, you do better, right? So here we are. And I think those voices that were like waking you up before, or that, anytime that you're like, gosh, I can't believe I like built this life. First of all, you build something, right? Like that's the most amazing thing about us, that we are creators. And that in itself is a purpose, the biggest purpose is like to create. So we did create something, but one day we woke up and realized like, man, I created this thing and I don't really like it. I want to create something else, and starting that rebuilding process. I definitely would start in categories. Like we do not have to burn it all down unless you feel like that's accurate, but you can start to, it's a system. So you start to work on one little thing, and how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you go into being like, you know what, I'm going to rework the way my relationship is, believe it or not, like as you rework that, you're going to show up different ways in your work and in other places. So that will also like, you don't have to get overwhelmed by doing all the work in all the areas, because just one change in one area is going to affect the other areas. You do have to, the biggest tip is that as we start to have to really change and get more aligned, we do have to let go. There has to be a lot of like, trust, a lot of trusting in the next phase, because remember, God's will versus our will. So the life that we created that like doesn't feel right anymore was our will. A lot of that, we were making that happen. We were putting that, we were, fueling it, all that kind of stuff. And now we're trying to move into a place that your soul set up for you. And you don't remember all of it, but you have to let go of a lot of, how you feel like you have to keep things together. So it is a new skill. Like the skill that got you to build what you built was like a very masculine skill, a very disconnected from spirituality skill, right? And now we had to develop this new skill that's much more intuitive. It's much more connected. It's much more feelings based, because your compass, the only thing, the little telephone that we were looking for to call back home when we started to remember, it is in your heart. It's in your intuition. That the little signs, the little feelings of like, I shouldn't, I should go here, not go here. That's the telephone that connects you to your spirit, and your spirit is guiding you versus this human world and this like society. So it is a new skill, and really to learn to like listen to that and follow that. So if you're right now asking and maybe putting a lot of pressure on like purpose being your work or whatever, just listen to what the very simple desires your heart is having, right? And it could be as simple as like, I want to help people, or
I have to, you're going to say this and I'm like screaming amen, because the second commonality that I see amongst everyone that's having a purpose burdening crisis is always connected to the same sentence: I want to help people. I want to serve people. And then the people that come to me say to me, my job is fine. I make a lot of money. I'm very comfortable in where I am. I have the perfect schedule to be able to pick my kids up at school. There's all these conveniences and reasons why people do something, but inside they feel like they're not really helping people, or they're not being of service. And then that starts to burden them, because what they're doing most of the day isn't aligned with this idea of helping people. But if you ask them, well, how do you want to help people? That's when really the fogginess comes in, and they're like, I have no idea, like they just don't even know. So how do you even start to unveil those kinds of, like that Cheesecake Factory menu of helping people?
Yeah. So the first thing is to understand like the heart and the intuition, which is the voice of your soul, right? Like, because we're just trying to get to the voice of the soul. Because even if I do a reading on you guys and I tell you, oh, this is what I'm seeing for your purpose, like, I'm not going to be with you every day. God is not going to be there with you every day. You have to develop that connection to your voice to be able to be guided on the day-to-day. And that's the connection of the heart and the intuition. It's all housed right here in the heart center. So the mind is very complicated and very wordy and loves to like give dissertations, right? And complicate shit. The heart is like a little simple. It's like Winnie the Pooh, the heart is very simple, speaks in like simple sentences. And as a person that's been, really working from my mind, my human self, I don't like that this is so simple. Like, that's very annoying. That's very uncomfortable. It must be wrong if it's that simple. So believe it or not, the soul is simple. It's simplicity, because all this earth human stuff is like BS to it. So like, this is everything is too excessive. I was actually in Miami this week, and I was like, being in the mountains, like, it's so not excessive. And I was like, wow, this is so excessive here, which I grew up in. But again, the ego is excessive, and the mind and all, and there's a place for that, of course, or whatever. But remember, like, the first thing that's going to be very new to you and very like uncomfortable is the simplicity of the calling. So it's annoying, and it is actually like disrespectful to the ego when the heart says, I just want to help people. It's like, F you, like, that is so simple. I am better than that. Like, I should have something grander than that, right? So it's already insulted by the heart. And that is the first way that we start to throw out the heart, the simplicity of the heart and the simplicity of the intuition. But the simplicity is actually the answer. So that's the first new skill that we need to start to understand the purpose. And God, I feel like I'm like forgetting what you asked.
Well, the question was if you're
okay. So if I'm getting that,
you've got this very general, okay. if you have a very general, because there are people that I have that will say that will be doing work, Nikki. They're already helping people. Like, when people tell me that, like, I just want to help people. Yes. These are people who are raising children. These are people, I mean, I have one client in particular who does incredibly purposeful, self-fulfilling work. I mean, she helps incredible people in her business. Like, she's in the medical field, and like, the work that she does is incredibly purposeful. There are people that help at their jobs, that they have they're all light workers. They are all light workers, and they're already helping people. And yet there is something inside of them that isn't feeling fulfilled, or they feel like they don't have purpose, even though their daily life is an embodiment of helping people.
So what I would say to that is that, like, that's one layer. And then what happens that many of us are supporting people and helping people, but in broken systems. So like, I might be helping my kids within being a mother, but the system of the mother is broken. The system of the family can be broken if I'm still in these old patriarchal systems where like nobody's grateful to the mom, and she's doing it all by herself. Like, yes, I can be supporting, but if I'm supporting in a broken system, it's not going to feel well. If I'm in the medical industry and I'm helping, but the system itself is broken, it's not going to feel great. So if you find yourself already helping, but it's still not feeling well, whether it's showing up because I'm working a certain way and I'm helping, but I'm not making the right amount of money or whatever it may be, that is like, take a look at the system. And what the hardest part about that is I sometimes have to leave the system to really do my deepest work, because the system itself is broken. So if you already find yourself helping, is it the system that I'm uncomfortable with? The other thing is, I would say, is that going back to that story of my brother, spoiler alert, the guy, became a doctor. He's an anesthesiologist, right? He's 2 years older than I am, married a doctor also. And he's a really funny person, because he could care less about being a doctor, right? Like, he just, like, it's what he was good at. He picked anesthesia because it's kind of a, it's like you don't even really talk to the to the patient too much. You're in and out. But he was seeking a certain lifestyle. Like he knew that if he became that doctor at that level, that he could sustain the rest of his life. And my brother is a big surfer. He's like all sorts of water sports and mountain biking. I mean, the most active person like I know. And his life, his purpose is actually like not in his work, but everywhere else. And he is such an example to people because he like lives to live, and everything else in his life supports how he lives, including his job. So remembering that also purpose is not, it's funny because it was a person that I wanted to be because it looked like, oh, he knows what, he loves. And it was like the contrary. He was like, no, this is a vehicle to live like the life that I, that I want to live, whether that's good or bad. And we can have, discussions about whether it's good that my brother is an anesthesiologist and doesn't really care. But he's such an example to people because every time somebody meets him, they're like, wait, you have no shame about like doing these sports all the time and traveling this way and buying yourself this little van and going around. Like you just live like that. Like he's very jovial, like within himself. And he is helping people by being him. So also remember that like when we say, I want to serve, I want to help, many times it's not physically helping, but actually by modeling, by being. And that again is really the difference between survival and moving into those higher energies, which is once I realize that as long as I am being, I am supporting. Like actually the act of being my brother, let's say, sends out a vibration to anybody around him that support. They don't understand why. He didn't lecture them. He didn't get on a Zoom and tell them anything, but by being, he is inspiring, by modeling, right? So
I can't tell you how much I love this. This speaks directly to my heart. And I think a lot of us have this, I'm going to say, for lack of a better word, a little bit of a crisis in thinking because of this concept of how you do one thing is how you do everything. I think a lot of us feel like once we start to learn about this work or we start to get into this purpose stuff, that like everything has to be geared around it. So the business, the work, that everything has to be geared around this purpose. Like you have to find out, I know that some people, like my son is an actor, and some people will be like, that's so beautiful that your son at such a young age already knew exactly what he came here to do in this world. And I chuckle because yes, there is beauty, but there's also beauty in the son of mine who's tried chess and football and art and like is learning all these different things and is like still has no idea like where he wants to go. There's just as much beauty there as there is in the person that has this direction and knows exactly where he's going. I feel like both paths are full of magic and beauty, but the crisis comes in thinking that everything has to be like through the same funnel, through the same tunnel.
Well,
and Nick, go ahead.
The problem is in the question, because the question is, what is my purpose, rather than the question instead being, how can I live on purpose? Because what is my purpose in itself is so limiting, right? It's like it in itself is asking us for this very narrow tunnel, where instead to realize that like I am a being that is existing, that is living. How do I live on purpose? And that's very different because, for me, like living in Miami over the last few years did not feel purposeful. It did not feel aligned. It did not feel right. Right. So what does that have to do with anybody? Like, am I really serving the collective by moving? No, but like it is me living truly into that purpose. And I don't know what living on land, what it's going to do for the collective or for other people, what it creates in me. I think about Orly, who's an actor, who will be an actor, but we don't know what that vehicle actually creates for him. Like what if at 25, he is a famous actor and he finds some sort of activism, and it was never really about being an actor. It was that was the car that got him to that destination. So again, we have to be very, living on purpose, having a purpose-driven life is not for the faint of heart, because you can't see too many steps in front of you. Like when we start to ask those questions, again, the minute you start asking those questions, you have left the realm of the mind, the human, the matrix, and you've moved into the spirit. So like, you brought yourself here, it's your fault. But once you're in that place, there's totally different rules. And you have left the world of like linear, guarantee, predictable, like, oh, if I just keep climbing this ladder, this is what's going to happen. You have left that and you have moved into the unknown. But that is the womb space. That's the creative space. That's how you create your life. But it's not that there's no guarantees. It's just that there's so many possibilities when you move into that place that all you can see is 2 steps ahead of you. Like, you cannot, very rarely can you see that linear line of like, oh, if I just stay here, I'll continue, I know exactly what I'm going to predict. I can predict exactly what's happening. If I experienced that being in Miami, I had my kids in the schools that we all went to, that we all sent to. I know exactly what kind of kid is going to be produced if I keep them in this school that I went to, that my friends, like, I know exactly what's going to happen. But my calling was bringing me somewhere else, which meant bringing my kids to a place that I don't know what this is going to produce. Now we're in a new town and a new, whatever. So I can only see like, this is where I'm meant to put him right now. This is like, what's happening right now. This is what's calling me right now. But I'm no longer in the space of like this human lie that we can control everything. Now I'm very aware that there is so much unknown in this space. So as we move into like place of purpose, the greatest, tool really is going to be like that heart, that intuition that is going to guide you, and to never expect too many steps in front of you. So if today helping people sounds like, I really just feel like I want to put together a little Christmas toy drive. Like, I don't know, that just sounds like fun for me. And that just sounds like something I want to do. Then that in itself is it's a purpose-driven life. And I don't know what's going to happen of that toy drive. I don't know where that's going to go, but you're not going to get like what we got in the other life, which was like, oh, you're going to study to be, a nurse. And after you study to be a nurse, these are the 3 jobs that are available to you, and you'll get that job. And once you're in that job, this is pretty much how it's going to pay. I mean, there's a lot of guarantee, and that's why it's like nice to be in that space. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is a more expansive, a more beautiful, very fulfilling life, but it comes with its, I don't know what to call it, but it comes with its, like you're giving up a lot of this fake control that you thought you had in the other life. So don't expect to find that over here.
Yeah. When you said the story about your brother, it made me think about my husband, because
yes,
my husband's
very similar.
Orlando's a criminal defense attorney, and if you were to ever ask him, like, is being criminal defense attorney like your purpose in life, he would be like, absolutely not. But he's found the vehicle that gives him the ability to live the life that he wants to live. And just today, totally has nothing to do with this interview, but just today, we have this joke, he's an only child. So whenever he sees his kids living this magical life where they can like be with their friends and have sleepovers and all these things, it's always so different from the life that he grew up in. So we have this running joke. And today, as he was leaving the house, I said to him, oh, what a life your kids live, because they're outside playing football with their friends, having the time of their lives, like just being raised in this magical life. And his response to me was, and so am I, right? Like, I am living that magical life. And he was like, I mean, isn't it true? Like, isn't the definition of success if you wouldn't trade your life for anybody else's, aren't you successful? He's like, because if you were to ask me today, I wouldn't trade my life with Tom Brady or with Elon Musk. Like, this house and this little life is exactly where I should be. So I'm successful. Mind you, he's on his way to do something that's not his favorite thing in the world to do. But he's so clear, like he has a lot of, like he doesn't have any confusion that that's the, like you said, the vehicle. So I love that you used it as a vehicle, because you can always get a new vehicle. Like you have, and then you showed us that we always have a choice. So this idea of, well, is it the vehicle that's bothering you? Or is it that you're remembering? Or is it that you are choosing to stay in a vehicle that no longer serves you? Like you're giving each person in this audience a lot of control in a world that they cannot control, but they do have control over their choices and over how they look at life. And I just think I think what you've said is absolutely beautiful. If anybody has any questions and they want to put it on the chat, take advantage. I want to make sure that your questions get answered. But I do have one more question for you, Nikki, and that is, like, there are certain people that have a little bit of when this purpose work starts coming up, there's a little bit of like anxiety that's tied to just everyday life. It's like waking up in the morning and not knowing how you're going to live on purpose.
Right.
So what advice do you have somebody that is experiencing that remembering and that has that anxiety and that doesn't even know like how to wake up and live on purpose?
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, especially in stages of leaving one season and going to the next season. And really what that is that I have a lack of a North Star. I have a lack of focus, really. Like I wake up every day, like, what is that, that focus? Even, my husband is a recovering addict. And like, an addict even has a purpose. They wake up every day and their North Star is like, how do I get my thing? Like that is their focus, right? So every, like we, at the end of the day, we're looking for that focus, that North Star. And I think that's also has a lot to do with like why we're asking the question about purpose. And you can check into the heart and start asking yourself those questions to define like what is the North Star for you, and know that may change in seasons. I actually and Caro I know does this too, but even just giving yourself a word for the next year, like really kind of feeling into the year that I moved, which I did not know I was going to move. I said, like, my soul was really seeking adventure. And to me, adventure was like to get out of the predictable, like to go into a place where like adventure is like, you don't know what's going to happen. And I wanted to really embody that. And for that year, the energy and my North Star, my focus was adventure. And was a good word for me because it was the year that we found this land and we moved, and it was so much of the unknown, so much stuff that I could not predict or control. So adventure was like a good friend for me. So we are moving into the next year. So these next few weeks, actually, I think we only have like 6 weeks left in the year, is a really good time to decide like what word do I feel like my soul is asking me to embody or to hold on to, and let one word guide you. And like the accumulation of those words ends up making this like beautiful purpose, but every year has a new energy for you. So you're seeking a focus and a purpose. So it could also be sometimes like where you're in seasons that like the purpose or the focus is to make money, and sometimes, it's to make money and serving people or whatever it may be, but find something that's pretty simple that can guide you. And a lot of times like walking towards that North Star is actually what gives you a lot of purpose also.
You helped me tremendously when I was starting exploring meditation, and I was so confused. I didn't understand, like, am I meditating right? Is this what meditation is supposed to look like? And very much like when you were talking about the heart is simple, you kept trying to tell me like meditation is simple, but I was very much like, it can't be that simple, right? Like I have to sit in silence and I have to I have to connect with the Dalai Lama. And I just like, this isn't working for me, right? Like I'm not enlightened. In fact, this is a true story, but I've actually said to Nikki on several occasions, like, can you come to my house so that you can watch me meditate to see if I'm doing it right? Like, this is a true story. So one of the things that you helped me so much with, Nikki, was when you were teaching me about meditation, you said, Caro, your life is meditation. If you're washing the dishes and you're being fully present in that moment, then that is a form of meditation. If you're doing homework with your kids and you're being fully present and you're not distracted by your phone or by your thoughts or by, what you're going to wear at the party tonight, that is a form of meditation, right? It's like your presence. And I think with that simplicity, you're saying almost like the same thing. Like when you're if you're focused more on living a life that is purposeful, and you're making the things you do on a daily basis purposeful, then you don't have to worry so much about that complicated question of, are you living on purpose? Like, are you fulfilling this like grand purpose of the earth? Because on a daily basis, you're zoning in, you're focusing, whether it's your word or whatever, on being purposeful in that moment, and then trusting that that's going to guide you somewhere bigger.
Yeah. And I would say, I love that. Yes. Meditation's, like, I want to give you like a few tips because, and you bringing up meditation reminds me of this. As we move into this place of like, what is my purpose? Remember, you are asking that question to your soul. You're basically human Nikki is like calling up higher self, Nikki, whatever her name is. I'm sure her name is a sound, probably. It's not a real name, right? So I'm calling her and I'm like, hey, what am I supposed to do this lifetime? So what that means is I have to have a lot more time with my soul, whatever that means to you. I know as a little girl, I would watch my mom play the piano because she's this beautiful pianist. And just by watching her, I was like, oh, she's somewhere else. Like she is with something else. So that was like her meditation or her time with her soul. My brother is a surfer, like in the water, right? Like that is his time. So in order to really like live and find that purpose, live that soul-led life, you need to arrange times with your soul, make sure you have those, find what that is. Sometimes it's just silence. Sometimes it's a great book. It's a vacation by yourself. The more you can build it into your everyday, right? That's the goal, because that's the person or the spirit, the energy that's going to guide you. So we can't do this without the awareness that human Nikki is not dictating this, that there is a humility in me to know that there is something greater than me that is guiding me, whether that's God, my higher self, Jesus, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just all the same thing. So that's not, I would love for you guys to pick a word, if that's possible, for the next year to develop like that time for your soul. And also like, let's try to like broaden what is my purpose? Like maybe not use that sentence because it is very limiting. And instead you can ask yourself on the day-to-day, because I know a lot of times we're asking that purpose because something in our life is not working, right? Like, it's like, I am trying to be all zen, I'm trying to be present, all that stuff, but I hate this shit. Like there's so many things about this life that annoy me, that I'm mad at. And again, that is me trying to live true to my soul. Like there is something, that Miami life that I lived was a beautiful life for somebody else, for another soul. It wasn't for my soul. This life at this time, exactly. My girlfriends, I was out to dinner with them in Miami, and they're like, so tell me about that mountain you live on. How's that going? So like this life that I live is horrible for like some souls, right? So you're trying to get to this place that you're trying to really live true to your soul. So I want you to ask yourself, in situations that feel a little weird, or even good situations or whatever, or maybe situations that you take for granted, that you just do on autopilot, you can start to ask yourself, like, is this true to my soul? Is this my truth? Right? Because whatever answer you get from that. So if I, when I had to get really honest about myself, about where I was living, and I said, is this my truth? And the answer was no, then I was living out of alignment with my soul, out of alignment with my purpose. all of it. So there is, I don't want to pretend like your pain of the question and the pain that comes with that question isn't real, because there are probably things that are incorrect or do not serve you anymore, out of alignment with you, that need to be changed. And really what, when you're looking for that thing to guide you, it's your true expression, because your soul wants to express itself, which means it wants to live in truth to its expression. So there are some things that you may be doing today in your life that you've been doing for many years because it's part of your roles, that are not true to you. So you can start to ask yourself that, and that you don't have, it does not need to be fixed overnight. It's as simple as, my son, he's always struggling with school because he's very fast paced and he finds it to be very boring and slow and all these things. And, it stresses me out because I'm like, well, I can't homeschool this guy right now. I'm not in the place to. And I just started to validate him. I just started to hear like, hey, I hear you. I understand that this is not a fit for you. These are some ideas I have, I would love to do. I can't do it overnight, but I know this. And it gave him so much peace. So even like that soul that's like fighting and like just being like, oh man, like this does not feel right. I think a lot of us are afraid to confront the soul and to ask that question, like, is this true for me? Because we think we're going to have to, divorce our husbands and our wives and burn down our businesses. And that is not the truth. It does not, it can happen overnight if you want to, but it does not have to happen. And it might take 2 years for it to change, but there has to be some honesty about like what's not working and what is not a true expression of you. And that is how you're going to get closer and closer to that purposeful life that you're looking for.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So let's say that I love this so much, but I thought, what if I can like take a class on this? Would I be able to find a course on this anywhere, Nikki?
Definitely, we have a purpose class. It's a little bit more, it's like second level, you guys. And it's, I have a soul-led purpose, which is a little bit more into like the metaphysicals, and then I teach a lot of intuition class. If anybody's interested in that, I have, soul seeker, and which is like my basic level. And then the soul-led purpose are probably like the two programs that I do. And even just like hang out with me on Instagram. There's always like information on this all the time. And I don't do too many readings right now, but I have a lot of girls that read under me. So if you guys want a good reading, I believe in a good reading because that's an opportunity to be with your soul. So that's really beautiful. So anything like that. And I just love to keep in touch.
So, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that you have your Soul Seeker course is coming with like 4 bonus live coaching sessions with you.
Yes.
This month, right? Like, isn't that happening like right now?
Yeah, today is the last day to buy Soul Seeker. It's the 197 program. It teaches you how to activate all your intuition. And it's usually an on-demand program, like with no support. But right now, if you buy it, today's the last day, you get 4 like live classes with me where I teach the stuff, the work live, and we meditate together and we read energy together. So anybody who's into the woo-woo stuff, not like Caro, but on the other side.
If you want to go beyond Caro's mindset, here we go. Which, by the way, my 14-year-old was super curious. He wanted to know about astral projection. He has a goal, which I think is beautiful. Like, he wants to connect with my dad. He wants to see his grandpa. And he was like, I want to learn how to connect. I want to astral project because I want to go and see my grandfather. And I was like, well, I'll tell you where to start. So I purchased Nikki's course. I was like, I don't want even a discount. Like, I'm going to purchase the course so that he can, like, be invested in it. And he did the course. He did the Soul Seeker course, and he's working on his astral projection, and he's way further along in his journey than I am at the humble age of 14. So that's pretty cool.
You're definitely waking up earlier than us. So I think about like, what is the forgetting going to do if these kids come in and they're just like, they totally remember.
Know.
Yeah.
They just know. And another thing I wanted to share was my personal experience. And I know you're not really doing readings, but I think I'm just such a great example of your work, Nikki, because so I'm a stoic, I'm not woo woo, or I used to not be woo woo. I think it changed dramatically. But like I'm a stoic. I'm very personal development, very linear. Like Nikki likes to say, white Christian male. Like I come from the Franklin Covey school of thought, and that's worked for me always. Like it has always worked for me, and I love my background and my upbringing, and I feel like um, that linear thinking has gotten me to where I am. But there was a time in my life in early 2020. I just had a life-threatening pneumonia. I almost died. And it was a really hard time for me. And I was in an awakening, right? I was transitioning out of my work as a lawyer to all of a sudden do this motivational speaking and this coaching and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I'd been transitioning for a long time. I'd just finished writing a book, but there was something, I wasn't really fully aligned where I was supposed to be. So I called up Nikki and I was like, I want to do a reading. And the way that I approached it was very much like, I'm coming to this with an open heart, with curiosity. I'm going to take it with a grain of salt because I don't know if it's true or not true, or, I have no idea like what this is, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to receive. And in our reading, Nikki told me a lot of things, but one of the things that she told me was that my spirit guides were very frustrated and annoyed with me because I had a lot of work to do here, and I was using my children as an excuse to not do the work that I was supposed to be doing. And she was like,
I can imagine how Caro, took that. She's the worst to give like this information to, because she'll fight you and then like 2 years later, she'll be like, that thing you said,
I don't think I'm the worst. I feel like I was very open and receptive, but I was like, really? Hiding behind my kids? Like, are you kidding me? And so she kind of like threatened me a little bit and challenged me, and she gave me my word for that year, and I'll never forget it because the word was, do you remember the word? I remember the word.
Game on or something?
Game time.
Game time.
She was like, the word that keeps coming to me is game time. Like, it's your game time. Game time, game time. And I sat with it. I listened to the recording like twice because you get the recording. And it was an experience for me. And I said, I choose to receive this as if it were true. And I'm gonna dispel any sort of like questions that I have about any of it. And I'm gonna just choose to receive it as if it is true. And I took that my spirit guide suggestion and Nikki's challenge very seriously. And I was like, okay, it's game time. And my whole business, my whole life, everything has been built on that reading, which is crazy, Nikki, but it's the truth. Like if you really look back to one of the pivotal moments, I had already been doing the work. Like I'd already written the book, I had already developed core, I was already following in my father's footsteps.
It was like you were like in practice, like she wasn't actually on the field, so right. That's why it was like game time. It was like, you got to go play the game, you can't keep preparing for the game or practicing.
Yeah. So I had already been doing all that work and I was already there, but that reading changed me in a lot of ways. And I think it opened me up to where I am today. So, I was very grateful for that. And I'm very grateful for you, my friend. I really am. So if anybody wants to connect with Nikki, you can find her on Instagram at Nikki Novo. You can look her up, NikkiNovo.com. Sign up for her Soul Seeker class because you get this beautiful soul 4 times live, which is a gift. And I think that's it. I think we're right at time because we started a little bit late today.
Sorry, guys. Thank you. It was such a blessing to be with all of you, and I am so excited that you're having these moments, because even just by being here and asking these questions, like you truly are making the world a better place, making your lineages a better lineage. And I know it's not easy work to be so sensitive and in touch with your soul, because sometimes it's easier to be asleep, but I just honor the work that you are all doing, even just by showing up here. And I really thank you for your service.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for spending an hour at your lunchtime on a Friday to talk about these beautiful concepts and to share with me and Nikki. And I hope that it has given you some some inspiration and some direction as to how you are going to choose to live your life from now on. So, all right, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and you are free to go.